We're going to talk about behavior and specifically the principle of least interventions and also principles of applied behavior analysis. When I look at the principle of least interventions, what I like to look at first is definitely the prevention, making sure that the lessons are exciting and that not only are they interesting to the students, but that also they are made with multiple learning styles in mind so that a student who's a little bit more visually oriented, a little bit more of a visual learner, has something to actually look at, and maybe a student that's got more of a tactile learning style has something that they can actually, manipulate and work with their hands. So to me, when we're looking at prevention, we're really looking at creating a lesson that is engaging, uh, but not just engaging, but also keeps in mind that most of the time you're going to be dealing with multiple learning styles, and so therefore the lesson itself should reflect that, and not only that, but also incorporating some of the information that we learned with the brain rules, and trying to keep just straight um, talking, basically just talking instruction to kind of a minimum of around 5 minutes or so, so that nobody gets bored. Um, and then after we talk about prevention, I would talk about the nonverbal cues that you could use involving behavior and modifying behavior. You really can do a lot, especially once you have rapport with the students with a look. Um, the classic shh or no sound whatsoever also works great, just to kind of keep a little bit of quiet and get the focus back in one direction. So I definitely think nonverbal cues, being the second thing to look at, is a great tool for all instructors. Um, then we look at things like social reinforcers, praise, literally just walking over quietly and saying, "You're doing a great job there. I really like what you've done there." Um, Not only helps the student who might be having a problem, but also creates the environment for the rest of the students such that they um, get some benefit from that as well. And then also, adding in um, kind of the carrot instead of the stick, basically, offering preferred activities. Um, I really like the idea since most students, especially students that I teach and will be teaching, typically are older, so they have access to smartphones and things like that, and so allowing maybe a few minutes at the end of the class or the last 5 minutes of class to have kind of a tech time in which they can have the freedom to use their devices that I would normally prefer to be up during the entire class, unless we're using them for something like Kahoot or another tech tool that requires each person to have a device or each group to have a device. And then also, the fourth thing I really think is important is reminders, not only verbal reminders, you know, repeating the reminders is also very important, but also maybe making them visual as well, having them posted somewhere so that you can quickly reference it, so that it's always in their line of sight, so that they can refer to it as well and know what's expected. And then, just being consistent with those things as well, being consistent with the expectations and any negative reinforcement or any consequences to negative behavior, being consistent with those as well, making sure that we're as fair and across the board as we possibly can be is incredibly important. When we move on to looking at the principles of applied behavior analysis, I definitely, each one of those points really brings it to me in a way that I think is beneficial. Identifying the target behavior, coming up with a baseline for what kind of behavior is expected, choosing a reinforcer that's actually going to work for that student or for your classroom as a whole. setting up the criteria for that reinforcement. What is required to get that to happen. What kind of behavior um, not only meets the baseline but makes it allowable and acceptable for that reinforcement. Also, hoping that you don't have to, but of course it does require that you look at um, a punisher in a sense, or to me that's a fairly negative term. I would maybe go with just straight negative reinforcement. Um, and then, evaluating that program as it's going on, as it's working, and making any changes that are necessary, but also comparing how the system that you set up is working with your baseline, your original goal. Are the implementations working to achieve that baseline? And to me, those five things: the prevention, the nonverbal cues, the social reinforcement and preferred activities, the reminders, and then also kind of that set checklist of the applied behavior analysis. Those to me are the most important things from the material that we read as far as behavior in a classroom is concerned.